start off our first triple header of the Formula One season, we're going to Suzuka, one of the most famous tracks of all time with so many moments that are cemented in Formula One's history. Plenty of battles, notorious overtakes like Alonso when he passed Michael Schumacher in 130R 2005. And while this corner is flat nowadays, in those cars it wasn't, and it was a big risk to go head to head in that corner, especially with a guy like Michael, who was known to fight his hardest in any corner you try to overtake him in. In that same race in 05, Kimi Räikkönen had one of, if not the best comeback drives of all time. A lot of people bring up Senna's ultimate comeback that was also here in Suzuka, but Kimi was phenomenal that day, passing Michael, passing Fernando, starting in 17th and winning the race. It was quite incredible, and the overtakes he made were actually phenomenal to watch. And while we do have Yuki Tsunoda making his debut in the Red Bull here, Kamui Kobayashi was the first Japanese driver to get a podium here and will always be remembered. Max had a crazy victory in 2022 where he destroyed the field in a wet race, and it does seem like we might have some rain coming for this weekend. And of course, this held two very famous battles by Senna and Prost, where they collided, one time kind of being more on Prost, the other time being a lot more on Senna. The GP is a fan favorite and a driver favorite because it gives us so many good sectors where we can see these cars fly, and in general, just an amazing Formula One track. If we're looking at our preview, we're gonna have the hardest tires here from a C1 to a C3, and it's very possible we see some intermediates and wets here, as right now the forecast is saying somewhere around a 60 to 70% chance of rain on Sunday. Qualifying and practice sessions should be dry, which will give us an idea of where the pecking order could be. But for race day, it seems like the rain is following from track to track. We didn't get it in China, but 2 wet races in the first 3 races of the year would be something insane. Tire stress is very significant. It's almost always a 2-stop here. I think even with the intermediates, they're probably going to have to stop twice because obviously Sector 1 is going to put a lot of strain on those tires. And even parts of the track like Spoon really stress these tires out. Having a tire advantage plays a big factor in whether or not you can overtake. We actually saw overtakes in the S sectors last year. I expect it to be the same considering how significant this tire wear is and depending on differing strategies. And while it does have braking at a 2, there are some corners that are very difficult to nail and can give you a lot of lap time if you can really hit those braking zones correctly. Track evolution is a 3 and downforce is a 4. You need it for Sector 1 and Sector 2. And while there are some big straights, most of your lap time is found in the S's to start off this crazy lap around Suzuka. With that being said, here is a live lap by me. Today we're doing a lap around Suzuka, one of the most famous tracks of all time in Formula One, and a very technical and difficult track. I actually had a pretty decent ranking here before, somewhere in the 1500s, but they've wiped it a couple of times, so I'm going to try and give you my best lap possible. I have also partnered with EA for the F1 2025 game, so if you do purchase it via the EA app and use code UNCHAINED, you will help support the channel and you'll also get 15% off the Iconic Edition as well. Alright, let's get started with the lap around this famous track. Not like that. That's horrible. The rear's gonna be kicking out a lot here and the ghost is gonna be tweaking. Too much understeer here and invalidated lap time. Brake as late as possible. Oh my god. You do not want to V off his corner. You want to try and carry as much speed as possible, which I did not do for the 10th time in a row. No! And then invalidate the lap time because you suck. Use a little bit of that curb to... Oh! And then understeer and go into the wall. Okay, start up the lap in 3rd gear. Stomp on the throttle as soon as possible. Take as much momentum as you can into our only DRS straight of the track. Now it's turns A and B here. As you pass turn A, you want to try and carry as much power and speed through there. Lift off here a little bit while staying in 6th, and we're going to downshift to 5th. Full throttle as much as you can. Control that rear because that is really the key to mastering these S's. We're going to go up to 6th here. The more full throttle, the better for you. To 7th, we're just going to downshift, control, holding our speed. Use a little bit of the curb just to help us to turn in. Stay into 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Now you want to try and take this U-shaped turn, stomp on throttle as soon as possible. We're a little bit behind on our lap time, but we can make it up. This is a straight. You want to try and keep a very normal line here. We're going to downshift twice now. Use as much curb as possible. And we're understeering, kind of hard, but okay. We made up a little bit of that. To really try and beat this lap time now, it's going to be all about that last chicane, which is going to be tricky, but 130R, flat out. Do not take the curb or you will slide. Now brake as late as possible. Try cutting as much as you can, and I think that's actually a pretty solid lap. That's a pretty solid lap. We're going to take that. Top 16,000. Not too shabby. I've done much better before, but I'm happy with this at the end of the day. Now we can get into the predictions parts going into Japan, and we have a better idea of how these cars are. It's not as inconclusive like it was after Australia, where we had a wet race. It looked like McLaren was going to dominate. And while it does look like we're going to get some rain, they know what type of setup they need to use, and they probably won't make the same mistake. I mean, hint being Ferrari that made a crucial mistake in the Australia GP. We're going to start off with best drive, and for me, I think it's going to be George Russell, one of the only drivers, with the exception of Max, that have been top 5 in every single session. And he's been having, I think so far, with Max, probably the best start to the season. He's been phenomenal, leading that team with the rookie driver, Kimi Antonelli, and just doing a good job. The Mercedes is really strong, the balance is there, and George is putting it in spots that it deserves to be, if not even pushing the car further than it deserves to be. For the flop of the race, this might seem like a cop-out, but I'm going to go with Nico Hülkenberg because it's a lot of high-speed sections, and that Sauber looks awful in any high speed. In Sector 2 was where he lost so much time, and both Bortoleto and Nico dropped the car in Sector 2 during the race because of how clunky and just overall undrivable the Sauber car was through that sector. I expect this to be a problem as well in Sector 1, where the S's play a big factor into lap time. So I think they're going to do poorly in qualifying, and then in the race, it's just going to continue to be a problem, as their race pace is also very bad. It does seem like the worst car, not by a lot, but mainly because of the handling characteristics. It does also look like they're going to have a livery here, but I don't think anybody's going to beat out that beautiful, sexy Haas. I mean, it genuinely looks phenomenal. The Unchained driver, and yes, there might be a little heart to this, but I'm going to say Liam Lawson. I feel like he's going to have a redemption race here in Japan. It's a track that he's super familiar with. Even in his Super Formula days, he was really good around here. I expect that to be the same now in the V-Carb, a much easier handling car. And I think he's going to be stand out because obviously we've seen him in P20 twice now in qualifying. He's going to do better and try and prove a lot of people wrong because he seems like a very good driver. I actually hope the best for both of them. I like both Liam and I love Yuki as well. It's hard to not like these guys. They're great personalities in my opinion. And overall good drivers, so both of them deserve a successful day. I'm going to put it on Liam because the expectations for Yuki are pretty low as of right now. And I just think the surprise is going to be Liam for this GP. And now for the surprise team. Maybe controversial, but it can't happen 3 races in a row they make a mistake. I'm going to say Ferrari is going to have overall the best team GP they can. Now, whether that means a win or not, you'll have to find out now with me going into my top 5. But I believe it's going to be pretty successful here in Suzuka, as it should suit this car much better. Lewis in Sector 2, and Charles is still pretty strong as well. We're gaining a lot of lap time in those high-speed sections, and Suzuka is a lot of high-speed sectors. They've really improved the car in those corners, and I expect that to be the reason why I have them as a surprise team. They're going to do good here. That's at least my thoughts. But let's go over my top 5 for the Japanese GP. At P5, I'm going to put in Leclerc, and while I did just say them as a surprise team, I think a P5 would be very solid for Charles to go there. And he's had a pretty rocky start to this year. Lewis was definitely the better of the two in the sprint race, but then in the race, Charles looked extremely fast, and there were times where his pace was up there with the McLarens. And if it wasn't for him pushing a little too much when George was in front and where he ended up losing a lot of his tire advantage, then he probably would have kept Max behind. He also had front wing damage, so a lot of factors to incorporate into his finishing position there in China. I do believe it's going to be a much better weekend, but I think this will be the first full race where Lewis actually beats him in P4. This is a track that Lewis knows very well. He's gone around here very well for a very long time. and he was the more confident out of the two going into the high-speed sectors in China. Something is telling me that I think here in Japan, he will be the better of the two, but it's not going to be far off. It's going to be a few seconds difference. They're going to be very close with each other. Maybe even some team orders are incorporated to just keep P4 and P5, but I believe it will be a good weekend for Ferrari. They got to forget about week 1 and week 2 because it just was not great. And the car is quick. They just have to put it together. I think the rain is going to kind of tone down their pace, hence why I don't have them in the top 3. But this is my surprise for the weekend, Lewis and Leclerc in P4 and P5. Now for the podium. It's going to be probably different, and there is quite the surprise in here, but this is just my predictions. And this is what my mind is telling me, at least for this race weekend. I am going off of what we know on the cars. I'm going to put Max in P3 here. I think the wet is going to help him. I actually think the Red Bull is going to be a bit difficult to drive, especially through Sector 2. But Max is going to make the Max factor happen. Finish P3 here. He's had very notorious performances in Japan. Whenever he had the car, he also dominated in the car. I believe this is a very strong track for him. And I think a podium position in that car is extremely solid. He couldn't do it in China. I believe here in Japan, he will get it. Now in P2, George Russell. I had him at best drive. I believe he's going to be sitting on the second podium position, and he's going to continue to show off how good he is as a driver and put himself in this championship run, even with the car that I don't believe is quicker than that of the McLaren and probably even the Ferraris. George has definitely came into the season with a chip on his shoulder, considering how it was these last couple seasons with him being compared to Lewis Hamilton, doing a good job. But now he's showing himself as a leader. I believe P2, but what that does now throw in for P1 is that one of the McLarens will not be on the top step, and I'm going to back him. I think he's going back-to-back. Oscar Piastri will be P1 for Japan. I believe he has a lot of momentum working for him. He had a pole position in China. There wasn't even a sprinkle of doubt that he was going to lose in China. He was just dominating that whole weekend, was very good in his tire wear. And maybe if Lando didn't have that brake issue, he could have caught him, but now we'll never know. So I'm going to back him here for Japan, and I will also give my prediction as to where I think Yuki will finish, as obviously this is going to be a big talking point going into Japan. For me, Yuki will finish right on the edge of the points in P10. That'll be a very good finishing point for him, even with the wet and everything. Something is telling me it's going to be a pretty good weekend, but he's obviously going to have some troubles because it is a Red Bull car, and it's going to be tricky for the Japanese driver to get a grip to it very quickly. And we got to remember, he didn't have a winter, he didn't even have testing, it's just a weekend, and then he's getting thrown into what is probably going to be a very chaotic GP, just like Australia, but he showed a lot of balls in Australia. He was really good in the wet and continued to drive extremely good. If it wasn't for the Racing Bull strategy, he would have had points in Australia that were very good, and he would have had points in China. So I believe he's going to pick up a point finally in a race. It'll only be one, but that'll be pretty solid to start off his Red Bull career. I'd love to hear your thoughts on in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.